as the confessed serial killer reportedly admits to murdering 3 more victims. Good evening, I'm Carol Marine.
And I'm Joan Esposito. Ron's on vacation. Let's go live to Phil Walters in Milwaukee for the latest. Phil?
Joan and Carol, Jeffrey Dahmer accounted...
Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer has admitted to more killings of young men in the Milwaukee area. Investigators say that 3 of the murders happened at Dahmer's grandmother's home in a Milwaukee suburb. Channel 7's Paul Meinke has the latest.
Police don't doubt Jeffrey Dahmer's latest confession, though he can't remember his victims' names and isn't sure of the year he killed them. He has told police that while living with his 87-year-old grandmother at a suburban Milwaukee home, he drugged, murdered, and dismembered a young Hispanic man in January of '85 or '86. 2 months later, on Milwaukee's west side, he says he picked up another young Hispanic man at a gay bar, brought him back to grandmother's house, and killed him. The grandmother was aware of none of this, and police have found no human remains in the house, though last week they did confiscate a hatchet, a sledgehammer, and a steel grate.
Is it possible that the body parts could have been just deposited into the sewer line?
No comment.
What police do say is that Dahmer killed at least 1 other victim at his grandmother's house, Anthony Sears, murdered the day before Easter in '89. His skull was among those identified last week at Dahmer's apartment. And though they cannot account for at least 3 bodies, police have now linked Dahmer to 14 murders in and around Milwaukee, and another in Ohio, where digging begins tomorrow for the remains of a teenage hitchhiker believed to be Dahmer's first victim 13 years ago. While investigators here try to find evidence to substantiate Dahmer's confessions, Milwaukee itself is dealing with some deep wounds left in the aftermath of the killing spree. 2 months ago, police could have questioned Dahmer when he was seen chasing a teenager who would later become a victim, but officers chose not to pursue it. Community groups are demanding an outside investigation and shouted at the mayor today as he and others appealed for calm.
We cannot allow this one man to cause the implosion of our community.
For now, though, emotions remain high as the secrets of a serial killer dribble out. In Milwaukee, Paul Meinke, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Here in Chicago, police are investigating...
I'm Bob Surratt, and this is First.
In today for Allis and Rosati. Weekdays we're here until 7 in the morning to keep you updated with weather, traffic, and news every 10 minutes.
Some of the stories making headlines this morning. Police in Ohio are searching for the remains of a 19-year-old hitchhiker believed to be Jeffrey Dahmer's first victim. And investigators are looking for clues into the shooting death of a Kenilworth woman. And they say her killer, boyhood home of confessed serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. They expect to find the remains of Dahmer's first victim. Robin's been watching that story overnight and has the latest now. Robin?
Bob, the victim was a hitchhiker Dahmer says he killed 13 years ago at his parents' home in Bath Township. With the help of a map Dahmer drew for investigators, authorities will begin digging for the remains of Stephen Hicks around 8 o'clock this morning, our time. Police believe Dahmer is responsible for at least 17 mutilation slayings. So far, he's confessed to 15, 11 whose remains were found in Dahmer's apartment in Milwaukee. This morning, gay and black leaders are calling for an outside investigation into the Milwaukee Police Department.
You asked Justice Department to come in here and investigate this city because black people
now reportedly want Dahmer to take an AIDS test.
5 minutes after 6 o'clock now, police in Kenilworth say the
Dahmer are revealed. We now know the identities of 15 people whom Dahmer has confessed to killing. Channel 7's Jim Gibbons is live once again in Milwaukee with more on that part of the story, plus a look at how residents of Milwaukee are coping.
Joel, Jeffrey Dahmer remains behind bars in the Milwaukee County Jail, the building you see behind me, but he is apparently continuing to cooperate. As you point out, he is continuing to identify victims, and the names of 2 more victims have been officially identified today. The latest victim, the 15th to be identified, is Richard Guerrero of Milwaukee. Guerrero is apparently one of 3 victims killed in Dahmer's grandmother's basement in the Milwaukee suburb of West Allis. No remains have been found, but a picture may have helped Dahmer make the identification. Meanwhile, the family and friends of Dahmer victim Tony Hughes gathered for a memorial service this morning. There was a casket with flowers, but it was purely symbolic. The last remains of Tony Hughes and the other victims remain in police custody, part of the evidence for the trial of Jeffrey Dahmer. Earlier, 23-year-old David Thomas was confirmed to be a victim. Family members say he disappeared in September of 1990.
I think it just hasn't hit me yet. Well, when it first started, I was watching it and different ones was call and ask me, do you think that might be your baby's daddy? And I was like, no.
Members of the Washington, D.C.-based National Organization for Victim Assistance have arrived here in Milwaukee. The group will teach counselors, teachers, and other community workers how to help the victims' families and residents of Milwaukee deal with this tragedy.
I think the overwhelming issue is this issue of grief. That for most people, the grief of the loss of a loved one, the loss of family members, the loss of community members is something that takes years to get over. And when that death is caused by a vicious and brutal and cruel murder, you add to that grief.
Community leaders have also established a fund to help the families of the victims. And there were more meetings again today on how police may have mishandled the case of the 14-year-old Laotian victim. There are charges that because Dahmer is white, the police ignored the reports of 2 black women that Dahmer was attacking the young boy, in effect, letting Dahmer get away with murder. And there's also new information being revealed today about the cruelty of Jeffrey Dahmer toward the families of some of his victims. It's been revealed that he called the sister of one victim, said don't bother looking for him anymore. When the woman asked him why, he said because he was dead. She said, how do you know that? And Jeffrey Dahmer, and this has now been confirmed, he admits to police that he made the call. Dahmer said, because I killed him. Reporting live from Milwaukee, Jim Gibbons, Channel 7 Eyewitness News. Joel and Sylvia?
Okay, thanks a lot, Jim. Meanwhile, authorities in suburban Akron, Ohio are digging around the boyhood home of Jeffrey Dahmer as they search for the remains of a hitchhiker who Dahmer confessed to killing in 1978. Officials are working to identify several pieces of bone found in the area. Channel 7's Chuck Gowdy is live in Bath Township, Ohio, with the latest on that. Chuck?
Sylvia, Joel, this is where it all started for Jeffrey Dahmer some 13 years ago. They now say that what he has been telling them is consistent with what they are finding in his former family's home here outside Akron. First of all, this afternoon, a startling finding from the crawl space in front of the family home. A bloody handprint, apparently put there 13 years ago by Jeffrey Dahmer himself. Well preserved because the crawl space is undercover. And also at least 50 bone fragments that are now being identified by the medical examiner here. The search will continue until Friday, but investigators say they are starting to find what they wanted when they started searching. The squadron of lawmen from Summit County, Ohio, bagged several bones and other evidence found on the property where Dahmer once lived with his parents. While these remains may not be from Dahmer's first victim, investigators suspect they may have been from animals that Dahmer slaughtered as part of a satanic-style ritual. Sources here tell Channel 7 News that in the mid-1970s, investigators found mutilated sheep nearby, and a beheaded dog was found strung up on a cross on the Dahmer's property. The teenager was suspected, and now it's thought he may have learned to kill animals before moving on to people. His first human victim, 19-year-old Stephen M. Hicks. It was the summer of '78 here in northwest suburban Akron. Dahmer has told investigators he picked up Hicks hitchhiking on this street, brought him to his family's home where they drank beers. When Hicks tried to leave, Dahmer hit him over the head with a barbell, then strangled him. He says he cut up the corpse, stashed it in bags in the crawl space, and then when it started to smell, moved it outside and buried it. He says he dug it up again, cleaned off the decaying flesh, pulverized the bones, and scattered them on the ground.
When the bones were disseminated, they were not buried. They were just thrown. So through over 13 years, they may be underground, and they may have been moved by animals. We have metal detectors that we hope will be able to locate maybe some teeth and the fillings that were in the teeth, and they'll just do the best job they can.
Why did he kill then for the first time? Divorce was ripping apart his family. His father, seen here with younger brother David, had moved out of the house. The father, Lionel, was living in this motel a few miles away. Dahmer's mother, Joyce, and the brother were visiting relatives in Wisconsin. So, home alone, he had the opportunity. He had just been graduated from Revere High School here in Bath Township. According to the school yearbook, Dahmer was on the tennis team and in the band. He had no major disciplinary problems. But this yearbook photo now takes on ghostly dimensions. It seems Dahmer had sneaked into the National Honor Society picture even though he wasn't an honor student. When administrators found out, they had him blacked out of the picture. And this afternoon, on the final page of the yearbook, reserved for personal student comments, former classmates must be wondering if this quote came from Dahmer. Only the good die young. We have found today that people around here have been asking a lot of questions of things that they may have taken for granted at one time. For instance, the telephone exchange for this area where Jeffrey Dahmer committed his first murder is 666, the biblical sign of the beast. People around here never took notice of that before, at least not in those terms. The one thing that everybody would like to know, though, is why Jeffrey Dahmer started his murder spree that carried from here to Milwaukee over a period of 13 years.